I caught my pregnant wife, Sarah, being intimate with her lover at a hotel, and a paternity test confirmed the child wasn't mine. She intentionally didn't get an abortion and called me petty, even demanding settlement, compensation during the divorce. She knew her biological father was killed by her lover, yet she still defended the murderer. Later, I teamed up with his lover's ex-wife and, at their wedding, exposed the truth. Her lover killed her father, deliberately sent Aunt Eleanor away, and used a fake divorce certificate to trick Sarah into marriage. Her mother was so enraged she fell ill and disowned her. Her lover dumped her after going to prison. She came back with the baby, kneeling and begging me to get back together, but I refused. In the end, she was deserted by everyone, estranged from family and friends, left alone with the child, wandering the streets. And I married his lover's ex-wife. I had just gotten home from the airport when I saw my wife, Sarah, curled up on the sofa, drenched in cold sweat. Hearing the door open, she called out weakly, "David, is that you? My stomach hurts so much. What took you so long to get back?" I didn't even have time to change my shoes before rushing to the sofa. Her face was pale with pain. Her appearance instantly terrified me, scaring me out of my wits. I immediately dialed 911. While waiting for the ambulance, I poured a cup of warm water and slowly helped her drink it. "Sarah, where's Aunt Eleanor?" I'd been away on a business trip for half a month, and worried about her being alone at home during her pregnancy. I'd specifically asked her mother to come stay with her before I left. But right now, there was no one else at home. The coffee table was piled high with takeout trash. Sarah immediately started crying tears of sorrow. My stepfather accidentally broke his leg, so Aunt Eleanor had to go back. Hearing this, I held her tightly in my arms, soothing her gently. My heart aching, "Sarah, it's all my fault. I won't go anywhere else from now on. I'll stay home with you and Buddy every day. Don't be scared, I'm here." Thankfully, the ambulance arrived quickly. The paramedics gave her oxygen, and the abdominal pain eased. Once we got to the hospital, after a thorough checkup confirmed that both Sarah and the baby were fine, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. Given Sarah had signs of threatened miscarriage, the doctor recommended a few days of hospital observation, which I readily agreed to. This was mine and Sir's first child, and I cherished it dearly. A nurse took Sarah to the hospital room while I stayed in the office waiting for the doctor to prepare the admission papers. "Young man, I know you're full of youthful vigor, but you need to exercise some restraint." I was completely confused. Seeing my puzzled look, the doctor continued, "Even after the first trimester, you still need to control yourselves." Control what? As soon as I asked, I realized how foolish I was. The doctor meaningfully glanced at my physique. "And be gentle." A chill instantly ran through me. Embarrassment crept up my face, which felt hot and burning. How humiliating. Thinking about the half-month I'd been away, I somewhat understood. I asked the doctor in a low voice, "Doctor, just wondering, is it possible for my wife to handle it herself?" The female doctor, whose pen had been flowing freely across the page, suddenly stopped. She looked at me with pursed lips. "If you did it, you did it. Nothing to be embarrassed about. Don't try to blame it on your wife. Even during pregnancy, you need to take precautions to reduce the risk of miscarriage." Even as slow-witted as I was, I finally understood what she meant. I don't know how I managed to walk to the hospital room. After the ordeal of the night, Sarah was already sound asleep on the hospital bed. She had slight insomnia during pregnancy, and this was the first time she'd fallen asleep so quickly. I couldn't help but wonder why she was so tired. Her loose hospital gown revealed her fair skin. I instinctively went to tuck the blanket around her, but she seemed annoyed by my disturbance, whimpering and turning onto her side. Now I could clearly see the red marks all over her chest. Had she really cheated on me? Just before I came home. If I hadn't managed her from the airport saying I was almost home, would I have caught them in the act? The marks were a mix of light and deep. They were glaringly obvious on her chest, which was particularly full due to the pregnancy. Clearly, they weren't all left today. Some had already faded considerably. Could it be that Sarah had another allergic reaction and scratched them herself? Remembering her past incidents of skin rash, redness due to allergies, I opened my phone and searched online. I saw that it was indeed possible for pregnant women experiencing discomfort, rash as breasts enlarge. I pushed down the wild thoughts surging in my mind once again. To get back early to accompany Sarah. I had worked non-stop in Eastwood City for 3 days without rest. Now, looking at Sarah, who was breathing evenly on the bed, I didn't feel the slightest bit of sleepiness. I stayed up all night, watching over her by the bed. Sarah woke up fully rested and refreshed. Seeing the dark circles under my eyes, she was surprised. "David, you didn't sleep all night." She looked at the hospital bed next to her with some confusion. "Didn't the nurse tell you? You could have slept there." I stared at her intently, somewhat lost in thought. Her face, which I had pampered, was full of collagen. Especially with the morning sunlight shining into the room, she looked even more like an exquisite porcelain doll, already fair-skinned as she was. Could a girl who was completely devoted to me, who even moved far away, for marriage, for me, betray me? I still couldn't believe it. To be precise, I didn't dare to believe it. David, is there something on my face? I shook my head. No, I was just worried about you and Buddy, so I couldn't sleep. Hearing this, Sarah's eyes instantly welled up. She affectionately linked her arm through mine and leaned in to kiss my face. David, you've worked so hard. I love you. Perhaps because of the lingering doubt, her intimacy made me feel slightly uncomfortable. I forced myself not to get up, not to push away Sarah's delicate little hand. I tried hard to convince myself not to overthink. If Sarah were to betray me, I'd rather die than believe it. I truly couldn't believe it. But the doctor wouldn't lie to me. She clearly thought I was too embarrassed to admit that I had gotten carried away, and almost caused my wife to miscarry. As for the precautions the doctor mentioned, I understood even better. Because I had already learned about it online. The important thing was that the doctor performed an internal examination, and they knew better than I did why Sarah had signs of threatened miscarriage. Without absolute certainty, the doctor would never have gone out of her way to tell me, a man, so much. I tried to cheer myself up. After accompanying Sarah for fetal monitoring, I suggested going home to make dinner. Sarah didn't refuse. My heart unexpectedly relaxed. I must have been overthinking. At home, I cleaned up the takeout trash from the coffee table and searched the entire place, finding nothing unusual. I couldn't help but curse myself for being suspicious. Maybe it was just that I wasn't home, and Sarah felt lonely and couldn't bear it. In my eyes, what was that compared to? She was pregnant, and I had been taking care of things myself anyway. The haze in my heart dissipated. I hummed a tune, threw away the trash, and started to make dinner. But what was the powder in the sink that hadn't been completely washed away? I picked it up with my finger and sniffed. My mind was instantly struck by lightning. Cigarette ash. No one smoked at home, and Sarah certainly didn't smoke. Before she was pregnant, the smell of smoke made her feel suffocated. After getting pregnant, she couldn't stand it even more. So, which man came to my home and had the audacity to smoke in the kitchen? The kitchen knife on the cutting board chopped faster and faster. Asterisk thud 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 asterisk. Just like my desire to chop up that wild man. Just then, Sarah called me. David, Aunt Eleanor brought some chicken a few days ago. Could you take it out to thaw and made chicken soup? Aunt Eleanor came over. That makes sense. After all, Aunt Eleanor smokes. She must have couldn't resist smoking a couple of puffs, and Sarah stopped her. It was because of this that I didn't dare to let Aunt Eleanor take care of Sarah. Opening the refrigerator, there were indeed 2 chopped chickens. The packaging looked exactly like the grocery bag Aunt Eleanor usually used. If Aunt Eleanor had come over, then the cigarette ash really couldn't be blamed on some other man. After a flurry of activity, with the chicken soup simmering, I called Aunt Eleanor. Mom, I'm making the chicken soup with the chicken you brought. It smells amazing. Thanks, Mom. You little brat, at least you have some conscience. How's Sarah's appetite these days? Is her morning sickness better? Aunt Eleanor rattled on, giving me a long list of instructions on how to care for a pregnant woman, covering every detail. My eyes were red, and I didn't dare tell her that Sarah was in the hospital. Unexpectedly, Aunt Eleanor mentioned something. David, did you get a new car again? My heart skipped a beat for no reason. Mom, I'm saving up for the baby. What new car? Oh, then I must have seen wrong. Never mind. Aunt Eleanor hung up the phone without waiting for me to say anything else. After cleaning up the house and delivering the special lunch to Sarah, I finally couldn't hold on any longer and collapsed onto the bed, falling asleep instantly. I forced myself not to dwell on things. But in my half-asleep state, I felt like someone was staring intently at me. This sleep wasn't peaceful because of the turmoil in my heart. I even heard Sarah calling me, but no matter how hard I struggled, I couldn't wake up. In my consciousness, I seemed to hear familiar panting sounds. I don't know how long it took, but I finally woke up. Looking at Sarah, who was eating fruit nearby, I felt a bit stunned. I must be going crazy. But her lips. Sarah, why are your lips so red? Sarah's motion of eating fruit paused, and then she said vaguely, the weather is too dry. David, try this. This watermelon is so sweet. After she said that, my throat did feel dry. Sarah, you need to rest. Why did you go out to buy watermelon yourself? I didn't. It was just an easy takeout order. I ate the watermelon, but my heart was heavy. Once the thought of suspicion lingered in my mind, I couldn't control my thoughts anymore. Unfortunately, until we were discharged from the hospital, I didn't find any more clues. I gradually felt relieved. But when I went to handle the discharge procedures, the doctor in charge pointed at the ultrasound report and told me, "Mr. David, your wife needs to be careful with her diet. She's only in her second trimester, and the fetus is already overweight." I blurted out, "How can that be? She had severe morning sickness during the first trimester and threw up everything she ate. Her appetite only improved a little in the last 2 months. How could the baby be overweight? This can be related to physique. Maybe the baby is just absorbing nutrients well, or maybe your wife's last menstrual period date wasn't accurate. Errors are normal. At this rate, the baby is probably measuring almost a month ahead of schedule, compared to average babies of the same age." After hearing that, everything went black. A month. How could there be so many coincidences? Could I be raising another man's child? Damn it, was Sarah here to deliver someone else's baby to me? The most important thing was, I had no idea who the other man was. I had been dating Sarah for 3 years, and her mother absolutely forbade her to move far away for marriage. She was the one who took her vital documents and rushed to Riverwood overnight to propose to me. After she arrived in Riverwood, she used all the money she earned during her internship to buy matching rings, holding a bouquet of roses, and proposed to me. I immediately knelt down right there. "Sarah, marrying you is the happiest thing that has ever happened to me, David." We embraced tightly and then went straight to the city hall, courthouse. A month later, she started having severe morning sickness. Seeing her suffer so much, I decided to combine our wedding celebration with the baby's celebration and make it a big event. I never imagined that Sarah, who had given up everything just to be with me, would betray me. We had been dating for 3 years, and though it wasn't some dramatic romance, we were known as the perfect couple, dream couple at school. She moved across the country for me, and she had only been in Riverwood for half a year. I knew all the men she interacted with. Every sleepless night, no matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't figure out who her lover was. Now, my mind was blank. Was I too narrow-minded, focusing my investigation in the wrong place? Yet, the following days were completely normal. It was as if everything was just my suspicion. To catch the adulterer, I secretly installed a camera at home. But the baby was almost due, and I still hadn't found a single trace. She was someone I had loved for many years, so I still meticulously took care of Sarah. But no matter how much I controlled her diet, her belly was growing like a balloon, much larger than pregnant women at the same stage. At 35 weeks of pregnancy, Sarah went into premature labor. My heart turned ice cold. When the doctor urged me to sign the surgery consent form, I signed it with a trembling hand. A premature baby weighing 9 pounds. Who would believe that? Aunt Eleanor hugged the grandson with a face full of joy, rambling, "David, this boy looks exactly like you when you were little." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I wish this chubby boy was my biological son too. I took some of the baby's hair for a paternity test. The waiting process was agonizing. When I got the test results, the heavy stone in my heart finally dropped. Buddy and I had no blood relation. Once the shoe dropped, I wasn't in a hurry anymore. Since Sarah had played me like this, I wouldn't be polite either. While she was busy recovering postpartum, I wasn't idle. Turned into Sherlock Holmes, I investigated all the information about the men connected to Sarah. Unfortunately, other than finding a failed early romance from her youthful period, I gained nothing. It wasn't until the day before the wedding banquet that Sarah told me, "David, I have an evening class tonight. I'll be home late." I hung up the phone nonchalantly. I watched her get into a ride-sharing car with my own eyes. I followed all the way to the airport. It seemed the mystery was about to be revealed. I stared intently at Sarah, who was waiting for someone in the crowd. A tall, slender man wearing a baseball cap appeared. Sarah flew towards him and clung to the man's waist like a koala. The two kissed passionately, oblivious to everyone around them. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to suppress the urge to rush forward. I followed the two to a high-end hotel and watched them enter a room. My heart throbbed uncontrollably. Over the past 6 months, I had gone from initial suspicion, denial, shock, and anger, gradually turning into coldness and disappointment. By now, I should have been completely heartbroken. My years of genuine affection for her were less valuable than food for dogs. Frustrated, I punched the wall several times in the stairwell. I kept telling myself to calm down. The pain from my bruised and swollen knuckles traveled to my heart, but it couldn't hide the renewed sorrow that welled up inside me. Checking my phone, I suddenly realized that there had actually been clues all along. Without knowing when, she stopped being like she used to be, always clinging to me and telling me silly jokes. She stopped rambling about celebrity gossip. We used to have endless conversations for a while. Did she ever have an ounce of sincerity towards me? Was I too busy? So much so that I didn't even notice her changes. Scrolling through old chat logs, hatred surged in my heart. It was time to end this ridiculous farce. As I got closer to the door, I could hear sounds that made my face burn. Calculating the time, I knocked on the door. The one who opened the door was that man. Steam rising from his head, still damp from a recent shower. The man was casually wrapped in a bathrobe, his broad shoulders and narrow waist enticing. On his exposed chest, there were several bite marks and scratches. It seemed the battle had been intense just now. Rage burned fiercely in my chest, adrenaline surging to my head. I clenched my fists tightly and got straight to the point. I'm looking for Sarah. Oh, she's in the bathroom. The man's nonchalant demeanor made my flushed face look extremely ugly by comparison. The man, who was about half a head taller than me, gave me an invisible pressure just from his height. When I saw the man's handsome, chiseled face, a hint of inferiority even crept into me. The man faced me, but his hand remained on the door. I'm Sir Senior, Ethan. Sarah came out of the bathroom at that moment. Ethan, is someone here? Her lazy tone was filled with extreme pleasure. I bit my lip hard and said nothing. I wanted to see how Sarah would react upon seeing me, her husband. She casually rubbed her hair as she walked to the door. When she saw it was me, her eyes clearly showed panic. She quickly recovered from her initial surprise and awkwardly pulled the wide collar of her bathrobe closed. Ethan then smartly removed his hand. Come on in and talk. His manner of asserting his claim as the host infuriated me to the point of bursting into flames. What were you two doing alone in here? I shoved the door wide open with a harsh push. Sarah, is this what you told me was an evening class? Facing my fury, Ethan remained calm and composed. As if he wasn't the one caught red-handed, but me. You weren't meeting her needs, so someone else did. Sarah's face instantly changed. She stamped her foot and whined, wronged, David. What do you mean by that? You don't know what I mean. You know how dirty you are, don't you? The moment I saw the man's face, I knew Buddy was his child. No matter how desperate I was, I wouldn't touch a bitch who had been cheating on me the entire time. I threw out the paternity test. Sarah, how much longer were you planning to deceive me? Seeing the paternity test, Sarah dropped all pretense and looked ferocious. You didn't have to do anything, and you got to be a dad. What else isn't satisfying you? Seeing me expose her, she wasn't going to pretend anymore. She wasn't ashamed, instead, she was proud and blamed me, thinking I should be grateful to them. I believed a good man never hits a woman. But at this moment, my hand was itching to strike. I had been working myself to the bone at the company every day to fulfill my initial promise. But she was cheating on me. I was responsible for making money, and she was responsible for being beautiful and giving birth to another man's child. A sharp pain twisted in my chest. My hand didn't hesitate any longer. I slapped her face, which was flushed with color, hard. Not expecting me to strike, Sarah staggered backward from the force of the blow. Ethan quickly and steadily caught her. His long fingers rested firmly on Sarah's waist, as if he had done that movement countless times before. David, you hit me. You bastard. Ethan helped Sarah up with a cold face. Man up. Can't you handle this? I was so angry I laughed. He calls this asterisk, not being able to play. I've truly seen it all. Sarah, you were playing me this whole time, weren't you? This guy, he's not the idealized first love you could never forget, is he? How could you be so low? If I'm not mistaken, he was already married, right? That time I was on a business trip. Was it because of something he did that you almost miscarried? Sarah listened to my barrage of questions, her face turning pale. No. I didn't mean to deceive you. Back then, I truly wanted to marry you. The pregnancy was an accident, and you were the one who wouldn't let me get an abortion. I was dumbfounded. This sudden deflection caught me off guard. Before I could utter a word, David said pityingly, if Sarah had really wanted to marry me, you wouldn't have been in the picture. If she hadn't rejected me out of spite because of you, you wouldn't have been qualified to be my son's father. You could say fate played a trick on us. Turns out, when Sarah learned David was about to get married, she decided to marry me out of spite. David returned to the country to win her back, but was rejected. To commemorate their past, they had a perfect final breakup. The result of that ending was me becoming a cuckolded father. Then David quickly got married. Sarah completely gave up hope and came to propose to me, carrying David's child. No wonder Sarah looked so terrible the first time. She had morning sickness. She was terrified. She never expected to get pregnant. But she knew the child wasn't mine the whole time. That's why she started having insomnia. With something weighing on her conscience, how could she feel at ease? When she first found out she was pregnant, she was especially considerate, saying I didn't need to go with her for prenatal checkups. She insisted she could handle it herself and told me to work hard and earn more money for the baby. When her morning sickness was severe, she brought up abortion a few times. But I talked her out of it every time. Honey, we've been together for 3 years, and this is the first time this has happened. It means we're meant to be with this child. At the time, her face was pale, and she was throwing up nothing but bile into the toilet. Honey, She trailed off. My looks were average, my family background was average, and being able to marry Sarah, I always felt like I'd hit the jackpot. How could I bear for her to get an abortion? I sought medical help, treatment, everywhere, trying to cure her severe morning sickness. Every time she couldn't bear it and wanted to give up, I comforted her like an idiot. I counted on my fingers, explaining the downsides of abortion for her health. I told her about relatives and friends who desperately wanted children, but couldn't have them, trying for years without success. She was swayed by me, and settled down to carry the baby from then on. But who knew? She and David were each other's first loves. Their parents forced them apart, forcefully breaking them up. Later, David was sent abroad by his family, and that relationship finally came to an end. She had aborted several of David's children. I found out everything clearly when I investigated in their hometown. Without caught them red-handed, I couldn't just turn on Sarah. I couldn't just be a sucker, raising another man's wife and child for no reason, and not even know which bastard cuckolded me. I'd endured this humiliation for a long time. Now, I wanted to see how they'd react when they were caught. I was originally planning to confront you tomorrow, but since you found out, we might as well clear everything up today. How could Sarah have the nerve to say something like that? Although, I was also planning to confront her tomorrow, but she was planning to humiliate me tomorrow at the wedding and the baby's party. Was this why David rushed back to the country? I quietly looked at Sarah, asking myself why I had fallen for such a horrible woman. Sarah calmly took out the divorce agreement she had prepared from her bag. Given how hard you've worked taking care of me and Leo, the baby, give me a settlement for wasted years, and I'll walk away with nothing. Leo, the baby, is mine and David's child, so you naturally don't need to pay a dime in child support. As for tomorrow's wedding and the baby's party, you can just go ahead and cancel it. A marriage that had been so painful, in Sarah's mouth, was just a casual transaction? I had always thought the scene would be ugly when we had a showdown. But I had overestimated her love for me, and underestimated her shamelessness. Your youth, you gave it all to David. What the hell does that have to do with me? You should be giving me compensation for emotional distress and wasted time, and compensation for emotional distress. Walk away with nothing is the fate you deserve. David frowned in displeasure upon hearing this. My son is still legally yours right now, and you've raised him for so long you've developed feelings. You shouldn't be so stingy. I couldn't help but feel amused. I laughed until tears came out. You two are perfect for each other, a pair of lowlifes. See you in court. I put away my phone, and shook it at them. Since he's not my son, hurry up and get out of here and take him with you, or if you're late, you'll have to dig through the trash can for him. I handed over all the evidence I had collected to my lawyer that night. I found an excuse for my mother to relax, and had my cousin take her out of town overnight. Leo, the baby, opened his big, round eyes and stared back at me. Such a soft little bundle. I wish so much that he was my child. Unfortunately, he wasn't. He was hungry, sucking on his fingers, and crying non-stop in the bassinet. I expertly mixed his formula, and when I held the bottle to him, he grinned at me, exceptionally happy. I waited for a long time, but Sarah didn't come back to pick up Leo, the baby. I called Sarah, and it rang for 7 or 8 times before she answered. Embarrassingly loud sounds came through the receiver, completely undisguised. I'll be right back. My face darkened, and I hung up the phone. Since Sarah wanted to disgust me like this, why should I babysit for her, and let them have a good time? After Leo, the baby, finished his bottle and fell asleep, I packed up his necessities and took him along to the hotel. This time, I pounded on the door. Leo, the baby, was startled awake by the noise and immediately cried miserably. His cries were deafening. The cheating pair inside finally quieted down. Sarah, wrapped in a bathrobe, opened the door with messy hair. I saw her face was flushed and her neck was sweaty. Didn't I say I'd be right back? I was afraid you'd be too lonely, so I brought something to spice things up. Ignoring Sarah's anger and dissatisfaction, I shoved Leo, the baby, directly into her arms. Have fun. In the room, The blanket was casually draped over David's waist. His face was dark as charcoal. Getting interrupted right when things were getting good, that must feel great. Hope you weren't scared out of your mind. I gave him a knowing smile and turned to leave. The crying and Sir's curses behind me were no longer my concern. Maybe it was the joy of being reunited after a long time, but the two of them didn't bother me until the court hearing. Given the conclusive evidence, the court ruling went very smoothly. Sarah received the divorce decree and glared at me hatefully. Alex, you are truly heartless and unfeeling. I sneered, well, that's nothing compared to your devotion. I hope you get what you want. David was holding Leo, the baby, who was arching his back from crying so hard and looked helpless at the court entrance. I kindly walked over and playfully teased Leo, the baby, a bit. Leo, the baby, immediately reached out his hands, insisting on being held by me. David's face instantly turned icy cold. Get lost. Stay away from my son. But I leaned in and whispered in his ear, the show's just beginning. David. David looked at me as if I were crazy, holding Leo, the baby, and going to meet Sarah, who was behind me. I got into the car in a good mood and left. Sarah never came back after that day. I kindly helped her by packing up all her things and throwing them in the trash disposal site, and I changed the locks. After making sure there was absolutely no trace of Sarah left in the house, I needed to go find my mother. The old lady wasn't having a good time playing every day and constantly worried about her precious grandson. I needed to prepare her mentally, otherwise when she came back and found her grandson gone, she would inevitably might get sick with anger. Just as I got on the plane, a beautiful woman next to me wearing sunglasses reached out her hand to me. Congratulations. Pleasure working with you. The beautiful woman took off her sunglasses and smiled nonchalantly. You're a fierce one, aren't you? You don't talk much. Dealing with people like that, I'd say I was being merciful. The beautiful woman was none other than David's ex-wife, Michelle. When I couldn't find any suspicious individuals, no matter how much I investigated, I turned my attention to David. Two separate investigations into David thus converged. The first time Michelle found me, I had just finished working overtime and was leaving the office. She cornered me at the office entrance. Alex. I was taken aback. This woman with a socialite aura, was she looking for me? You are. I'm David's wife. Do you have time to talk? I agreed impulsively. Coffee shop. My name is Michelle. Have you been investigating who your wife is cheating with? Her. Got straight to the point. Approach immediately. Put me on guard. I hadn't told anyone about this. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Stop fooling yourself. The child isn't yours. Even though I had my suspicions, hearing it from someone else's mouth was different. It's David's, right? Michelle didn't answer. She just pulled out a file folder directly from her bag. The person he loves has always been your wife. I flipped through the yellowed photos one by one, my veins throbbing in my forehead. This bastard sure knows how to play games. The day I went to Metropolis, he came back to the country. To get Sir's mother out of the way, David went to great lengths to find people to interfere, causing Sir's stepfather, Robert, to break his bone. After driving Sir's mother away, David brazenly fooled around with Sarah. He was the one who ordered takeout for Sarah. The car keys my mother saw on the entryway cabinet were also his. Even the cigarette ash in the kitchen sink was left by him. Even when I was sleeping in the hospital, he was the one who kissed Sarah until her lips were red. Why didn't such a devoted couple just stick together instead of coming out to mess with other people? Michelle explained everything in detail to me. The reason David didn't marry Sarah was because he killed Sir's father. The yellowed journal recorded David's pain and regret from his youth. He and Sarah secretly had sex and got pregnant. After her father found out, he was furious and wanted to break David's legs. After being beaten a few times, David held a grudge and wanted to make Sir's father suffer a bit. When Sir's father wasn't home, he secretly switched his heart medication. During another confrontation, Sir's father had a heart attack, but the medication he took was useless, and he died on the spot. David pretended he discovered Sir's father having the attack. Although he called an ambulance, it was too late. The optimal rescue time had passed. To this day, Sarah and her mother still don't know that David killed him. Burdened by taking a life, David was unsettled and fled abroad not long after, leaving Sarah and her mother to handle the aftermath alone. No one connected Sir's father's death to David. Even the information I found in my investigation said that David was forced abroad by both sets of parents who forced them apart. 3 years later, seeing that no one mentioned the incident, David started approaching Sarah again. Unfortunately, by then, Sarah had already confirmed her relationship with me. To get back at David, she shared every detail of our relationship with him. A man's strong possessiveness is an inherent flaw. David was no exception. The two of them started competing like this. Sarah couldn't let go of the fact that David left the country without a word back then. David couldn't accept that she had turned around and fallen in love with me, and that we were inseparable. Only now did I realize that the sweet, open relationship I thought we had was all put on by Sarah. All just to make David jealous. Maybe people are just perverse. When David saw Sarah being so uncooperative, he immediately turned around and hooked up with Michelle. The two of them acted out of spite, tormenting each other, and finally got married separately. And Michelle and I became a part of their game of love and hate. Even though Sarah cheated, I still believed there was some genuine feeling for me. But Michelle's appearance, along with the evidence, made me realize that I was nothing but a tool the entire time. Anger made me want to rush home and kill Sarah immediately. Michelle comforted me. Are you content with being fooled like this? Don't you hate them? How could I possibly be content? And how could I not hate them? The deeper the love, the deeper the hate. You didn't just find me to tell me the truth, did you? I took the cigarette Michelle offered me and smoked awkwardly. I took a deep drag and coughed uncontrollably. After quitting smoking for several years for Sarah, I actually couldn't smoke anymore. Pathetic, laughable. Michelle calmly watched my pathetic state and only spoke after a long while. It depends on what you want to do. She looked at me with certainty. There wasn't the slightest bit of frustration or anger about her husband cheating. In that moment, I was sure she already had a perfect plan. She just needed me to cooperate. Seeing me silent, Michelle flicked the ash from her cigarette. If you want to help David raise the child, then just pretend I was never here. With that, she put out her cigarette, picked up her bag, and left. I gritted my teeth and grabbed her bag. Whatever you're thinking, just say it. Michelle beckoned to me, and I leaned in. David was so impatient. He married Sarah in their hometown, with great fanfare, even though he wasn't divorced yet. Michelle did not want a divorce, she just didn't want David to get off easy. And David was reluctant to let go of Michelle's wealth. Looking at it this way, his love for Sarah didn't seem like much. To reassure Sarah, David got a fake divorce certificate. He was so eager, of course Michelle and I had to give them a wedding present. At the wedding, the cause of Sir's father's death was revealed. Who wrote that yellowed journal? Others might not know, but Sarah knew. Sir's mother knew perfectly well. The groom became the father's killer. The wedding scene was quite a spectacle. Under Sir's disbelieving gaze, David pressed his lips together and adamantly denied it. Sarah, this is all a misunderstanding. Mr. Miller, Sir's father, was my mentor. How could I do something so despicable? Sarah naturally believed David without question. Unfortunately, Sir's mother didn't believe him. After Sir's father was buried that year, she realized something was wrong. The heart medication at home had just been bought, but there was hardly any left. If Sir's father had taken the medicine and still died from an attack, she felt something wasn't right. But the person was already buried, so it couldn't be investigated further. The journal described the scene in detail, only someone involved could know it so clearly. Sir's mother, with eyes red-rimmed, walked step by step to David and questioned him. You killed old man Miller, Sir's father. Sarah panicked. Mom. David would never do something like that. Sir's stepfather, Robert, then received proof that lubricating oil had been secretly poured on the park ground before he broke his bone. Seeing the crisp sound of the fall on the screen, even Robert, who had almost recovered, still had his eye twitched. Robert narrowed his eyes, picked up the cane next to him, and, without a word, swung it at David. You beast. I knew there was something wrong with me falling out of nowhere. Killing Sir's real father wasn't enough for you. You wanted to mess with me too. Only then did Sir's mother realize she had also received the video on her phone. Who else but David was the one hiding behind the bushes, remotely controlling someone to pour the lubricating oil? David's face turned pale for the first time, and he swallowed hard. Dad, I didn't expect you to break a bone. I just wanted to be with Sarah, and I was afraid Mom would stop us, so I came up with a way to send away Mom. I didn't expect. What a line. Sarah looked at David with disbelief. So, was my father's death really your fault? No, that wasn't my fault. It was your father who insisted on chasing me to beat me, and had an attack. I just swapped his medicine for vitamin C tablets. If he hadn't eagerly pursued to beat me, he wouldn't have had an attack. The implication was, your father's death serves him right? Sir's mother was so angry, she picked up the bottle of champagne and smashed it hard on David. How dare you still try to marry my Sarah? You killed her father, and now you've harmed her stepfather. Are you not satisfied until you've killed all of us? David, knowing he was in the wrong, just stood there and took all of Sir's mother's beating and scolding. Mom, I just want to be with Sarah. As long as you let us be together, you can, beating and scolding me as much as you want. I thought the lovers would turn into enemies and fight amongst themselves. Sir's makeup was ruined from crying, but she suddenly knelt before her mother. Mom, David didn't mean to. If you hadn't, parents forced them apart, back then. How would we have wasted so many years like this? A blinded by love person's way of thinking is truly something else. She only had eyes for David. I only felt a sense of weariness. Looks like it's time to drop a bombshell. Sir's mother and stepfather looked at their daughter kneeling on the ground, utterly disbelieving, and utterly disappointed in her. Have all the men in the world died out? You had a good life married to Alex, and you get a divorce before the child is even weaned. What kind of brainwash did David give you? Sir's mother's chest rose and fell violently, looking like she could barely breathe at any moment. Just then, Michelle made her entrance, full of charm. Well, it's quite a lively scene today. David, is she your 5th or 6th affair? You're actually going through with it. Didn't you say you were coming back for a friend's wedding? What, you ended up being the groom yourself? Michelle's entrance was imposing, completely overshadowing Sarah, who was kneeling on the ground. Sarah couldn't bother crying anymore at this point. She scrambled up and coldly rebuked Michelle. What are you doing here? David has already divorced you. What right do you have to criticize him? I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Sure enough, women who are blinded by love wasn't thinking clearly. The moment David saw Michelle, he flinched, his gaze darting away. Unfortunately, Sir's attention was focused entirely on Michelle, his ex-wife, and she didn't notice anything unusual at all about David. Divorced. How come I, the actual person involved, didn't know? Sarah, like a determined fighter, was fiercely defending her love. You shamelessly seduced David back then, and now you're here to ruin our wedding. You're truly despicable. As soon as Sarah finished speaking, David rushed to cover her mouth to stop her from spouting nonsense. But it was too late. Michelle's bodyguard, swift and decisive, slapped Michelle across the face. Your head's not straight. I don't mind helping you out. With that, Michelle turned to David. Mr. David, you sure play around a lot. Your personal charm is boundless. You've harmed 2 fathers, and this airhead woman doesn't even mind. Now she can't even see that you're lying to her. Sarah took a slap, and David only slightly shielded her behind him. Seeing David's reaction, Sarah finally wasn't stupid anymore. David, you didn't get divorced. Michelle clapped for her. Correct answer. Your prize is this man. With that, Michelle turned and strode away. David immediately abandoned Sarah and chased after Michelle, apologizing. Michelle, she gave birth to my son. I should do the right thing by her. The guests were in an uproar. Gossip spread like wildfire. Only now did Sir's mother realize that Leo, the baby, wasn't my child. Her eyes went black, and she fainted on the spot. Sarah was angrily chasing after David. Hearing the gasps, she turned back and saw her mother had fainted, immediately finding herself in a dilemma. In the end, being a blinded by love person, she stamped her foot and cruelly went after David, leaving Sir's mother and watching the drama, guests waiting for an ambulance. When Sarah caught up, David was lowering his head, admitting his mistake. Michelle, you didn't want to have children, right? I'll bring Sir's child over for you to raise. My son will be your son. From the fact that David and Sarah had such a messed up relationship for so many years, I already knew they were an unusually messed up pair. But seeing something this outrageous with my own eyes was a first. If Michelle hadn't told me to just watching the drama and not show myself, I would have really gotten out of the car and applauded David. David, what did you say? When Sarah heard David wanted to give their son to Michelle, she was completely shaken. In that moment, her world seemed to collapse. Her eyes welled up with tears, but she stubbornly refused to let them fall. David, however, ignored her. This is for your own good. Do you know how hard it is to raise a child these days? Oh my God, his calculations were obvious. Where did David get the confidence to think Michelle would agree to raise someone else's son? Michelle smiled silently and drove away. I teased her. You're the one with a big heart. If it were me, I would have beaten him to death. Heh, people like that, I'd feel dirty hitting them. Michelle marrying David made us in the same boat. She was just fooled by his hypocrisy, plus his good-looking face. In the end, she gained nothing, and instead discovered his true disgusting nature. Naturally, she had to personally send that scumbag to hell. With the evidence from the wedding, David's affair and bigamy were confirmed. Michelle's divorce was smoother than mine. David, sentenced to a year in prison. When it rains, it pours. Sarah's mother and stepfather also decided to sue David. Sarah couldn't accept this result. She secretly issued a letter of forgiveness, understanding, for the elderly couple. Sarah's mother was so angry she fell completely ill, threatening to sever ties with Sarah. Sarah didn't care. She just wanted to stay with Leo, the baby, and wait for David to get out of prison, and live a happy life as a family of 3, with a normal, stable life. But a year later, when David got out of prison, he didn't rekindle their relationship with Sarah. Perhaps the label of being a sucker around Michelle and me was too obvious. David and Sarah found us one after another. When David found Michelle to ask for reconciliation, I was carefully supporting her, pregnant, on a walk. Alex. You bastard, you stole my wife, girlfriend. Sarah followed closely behind, holding Leo, the baby. Seeing me taking considerate care of Michelle, she also looked like she'd seen a ghost. How can you two be together? I couldn't help but laugh. What law says we can't remarry after getting divorced? You two truly love each other. We're making it happen for you. What's wrong with that? The inherent flaws of human nature were once again clearly evident in this pair of scum. What you can't have is always desired, and what you have is taken for granted. Now, Sarah was no longer David's heart's desire, and David's actions made Sarah realize she was nothing more than an afterthought. But what does that have to do with me? Excuse me, you're interfering with my wife's walk.